Hello and welcome back to this tutorial. In our previous video, we learned how to write automation scripts with SCAD and Scheduler library. And in this video, we are going to be learning how to send mails using the Python libraries. All right, so for this video, we are going to be using the Python built-in library, SMTP-lib. So I am going to simply import it by writing my import statement. So I'm going to write import SMTP-lib. So, and what is this SMTP-lib? Well, SMTP-lib is a module that helps you to send emails with Python. Okay, it's like the machine that powers the sending of the email with Python. All right, so you can provide it with the email address you want to send to, the password of your own email address, the ports, the host name of the email that you are using, and by the time you give it all of this information, it will log in and it will automate the sending of the email, right? So it will automatically send the email for you once the script is run. All right, so this SMTP lib needs a couple of things for it to send the email. But for the meantime, there is another framework that I would love you guys to install. So, and that is this .vmv, right? So you have this pip install python.vmv, and if I run this, you will see that I've already installed my own. So just quickly run this installation with your virtual environment activated, and you'll be able to start using the .vmv library. So what is this .vmv? Well, for the sake of this course, we are going to be needing some sensitive information such as your email password, the email address that you're sending to, and also the email address that is receiving your mail. All right, so some of this information are quite sensitive. So, and it's also an avenue for you to learn how to use this env file. All right, so and as you can see, requirement is already satisfied, that I already have this in my workspace. All right, so I'm going to clear this, and the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create the environmental file. So I'm going to call it .env. All right, that's what you basically need. Just call it .env, and as you can see, you have this setting icon to tell you it's a configuration file. And how do you create items here? For instance, you want to create a username that is very sensitive and you don't want people to see it. Probably when you're pushing to GitHub, you don't want people to see it on GitHub. You can create it here, right? And then by the time you're pushing to GitHub, you can add it in your git ignore file, right? So when you add it to your git ignore file, Git is going to ignore that file and it will not push it. Okay, so how do you create variables here? So for instance, I want to create my password. I want to put my password here. I will store it in a variable name called password, and I will set it to maybe a bunch of text, right, which happen to be my password. Okay, so whatever you are setting it to in this file, you don't enclose it in a string quote, you just write it directly, like directly. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is that here we are going to try to provide SMTP lib the information it will be needing. So, and the first information is going to be the host. So this host, we are creating a variable for it, and we are setting it to an SMTP hostname. So what is an SMTP hostname? Well, you know that Gmail is an SMTP provider, Outlook is an SMTP provider, Yahoo, iCloud, Zoho, and so many other ones. There are so many other ones, Amazon, SendGrid, Mailgun, right? These are companies that own softwares that can send mails, and that is why they are called SMTP providers. So the SMTP host name for Gmail is this, smtp.gmail.com. If you are using a Microsoft Outlook account, you can use this. And if you are using a Yahoo account, you can use this. All right, so I am using a Gmail account to send this email, and I am going to use the host name. So I'm copying this, and in my host, I'm going to place it here as a string code. Now, the next thing that I'm going to create is the ports that I'll be using to send this email. So what is this port? Well, you can think of this port as the exact address that you're sending this email to. All right, so now you can view your host as the computer that you're sending it to, and you can look at your computer in the direction of a house, a building that has a lot of occupants. Okay, so if you are asked to deliver a parcel to that building, you cannot just go to that building because there are so many occupants in that building. So, well, the building you have to know, and also the exact doorstep you have to know, right? So you can see your host as a building and the ports as the exact door that you're going to deliver to. Okay, so now I'm going to get the pot, and as you can see, there are two pots for almost all of them, and I'm going to explain briefly what they mean. So now, so if you're sending your email, there's something called an encryption, and in the internet generally, there's something called encryption. So for sending of emails, there are two types of encryption you can use. You can use SSL and you can use TSL. So SSL is good, but it's kind of a bit old and outdated in sending mail because it encrypts the entire email right from the point of initialization, all right, until the point of delivery. And then the expert thought of it that it would not be nice to close the door and pass into that door at the same time. Okay, so the experts felt like there should be an improved method, and that is when the TSL came in that allows you to first of all introduce yourself before you deliver the mail and then encrypt it. All right. So by default, this SMTP lib uses the TSL encryption. But if for any reason you want to use the SSL, you are free. And if you want to use the SSL, you use this port. But if you want to use the normal TSL, you are going to use 587. So for this video, we are going to be using the 587 port. And I'm going to just set it here, 587. So the next information that I want to provide for Python to use and send this email for me is the email address that I'm going to be sending from. And I'm going to store it in this variable from underscore email. Why do we need this from email? Well, if you're sending a message, there must be somebody that that message is coming from. All right. So the from email is like your email, the email that is sending that address, that email to the other email address. All right. So basically, SMTP sort of logs into your email and then sends this email as you. All right. So now my from email I'm going to install in this environmental file, all right, and the net and also the tool email, that is the email I'll be sending to. I will set up in that environmental file and password also. So I'm going to create the variables for them, to email and then password. Okay, so now, so like I said, if I want to create a if I want to create variables here, I could just say that I want to create from email. Note you don't have, there's no particular format, but the only thing is that you don't enclose the value in a string quote. So, and I'm going to say from email to email is just my own, it's just my own idea not to add space. All right, so just for easy navigation and typing, right? So I'm going to say to email and I'll set it to the email that I want to send to, and then I'm going to say password. So this password that you're going to insert here is the password of the email that you are sending from, like I said before, but it's not the regular password. All right, so it's the password that you're going to use is called an app password. And how do you create this app password? So I'm going to quickly go to my browser, and here in my browser I want to go to the email that I want to be sending with. So I'm going to say, well, so I'm going to just click on this account icon, and I'm going to say manage your Google account, and after that I'm going to go to security and sign in. Then I'm in here, I'm going to just search for app password. Okay, so if I search for this app password, I'll be prompted to enter my login credentials. So I'll just enter that, and I am going to see that I already have one app password here. So I've already created one for myself. But if you want to create, just enter the name of the password, just anything you like, you can name it, and then hit on create password. App password will pop up for you on your screen. Okay, so you just quickly do that and get back to our script. So after you create this app password, you're just going to come here and paste it. So and it will look like a random string like this, right? So you just paste it, and then the email address is going to be like example at email.com. So and you just enter and paste them like that. All right, so for now, I'm going to just paste my own configuration and I'll see you back on our script. Okay, so back on our script, I am going to import these settings that I have in this environmental file. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to import two major things. I'm going to import OS, and then I'm going to import the .env that I installed. So I'm going to say from .env import load.env. Right, so and I'm just going to call this load.env function here. All right, so here I'm going to set my from email to be os.getenv, and I'm going to open and close my parentheses, and then I'm going to use the name that I used to save the from email. So I used from email to save it, and this I am going to copy and paste for the next line and just change their names. Okay, now I'm going to change this to email, and then I'm going to change this to password. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to create is the message that I want to send. Okay, so and I'm going to store it in the message variable, and I'm going to set it to, well, a multi-line string. So this is the convention. You set it to a multi-line string, and without any space between the beginning of your string, you're going to write subject, and this will automatically become the subject of your email. So and you remember to write your colon, and I'm going to just say new email from me. All right, so that's going to be the subject of my email, and this is going to be the body, and I'm going to say, well, um I am sending this email from Python script. Okay, then I could just say thanks. Okay, so you can add as many lines as possible. Now we have created all the variables that we need, and now we're going to start feeding this SMTP lib with all of these variables so that it can use it to send the email. So I can just create another variable SMTP, and I'm going to set it to an instance of that this SMTP lib. So and I'm going to set it to SMTP lib.smtp. So now if I'm using just this SMTP lib will use TSL by default. But if you want to use SSL, you're going to say SMTP SSL, right? So now, so the next I'm going to do is to pass in the parameter that this SMTP lib needs. So it needs a host and a port. So I'm going to type in host and port. Okay, so and the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to start calling some methods on this SMTP object, and then so that we can successfully send our mail. So the first object that I'm going to call is the hello method. So I'm going to say smtp dot hello, and this is like introducing yourself to the network or to the server. And then the next one we are going to say is smtp again dot start tls. So this is like, okay, I have this is like, or you start encrypting this message. Okay, and then you can, some people they can decide to introduce this message as encrypted again by calling this method again, right? But if you don't want to, it's fine, you can choose it to do your own way. So I am not going to do that. Then I'm going to set to call another method, which is a login method, and this will take your email, that is the email that you're using to send, and then the password. So I'm going to pass in the from email variable that we created and the password variable. And the last thing I'm going to do is to send the email. So I'm going to say smtp dot send email, and I'm going to be needing three things. So the first thing is going to be, where am I sending from? That is from email, and then the email I'm sending to, that is to email, and then the next thing is the message that I want to send. Okay, so by the time I'm done sending this message, I'm going to just quit. So I'm going to type in SMTP dot quit. Okay, so and that is it. So you can use this SMTP lib without any help, just passing all this information, and in the message variable, you can enter the message that you want to send, and this will deliver for you. So I'm going to run this. Okay, I think we have an error, and that is because I did not save the content of my env file. So I'm going to quickly save the env file and run this again. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and everything is going fine. So I'm going to go to my browser to check for the email that I just sent. Okay, so this is the email, and it says new email from me. I am sending this email from Python script 10. So now you have seen how to use your Python message to send your email. So thank you so much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.